Hi everyone, I'm Alkis and I'm new to content creation, but I'm just here to talk about everything I like and find interesting on the internet. So we'll talk about this, the fact that Homestuck is apparently getting a resurgence and an anime pilot. The day I never thought would happen is here, but Homestuck is kind of unapproachable as a piece of media. The website barely works, I think the books are out of print, and Hussey just took down the unofficial edition. So there's no real ways to engage with it outside of maybe the Let's Read by Voxus, but there's over 100 videos on that playlist. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing my best of recapping each act of Homestuck so you get the full narrative as unbiased as possible. Homestuck starts narratively on April 13th, 2009. Do remember that the date is apparently quite important, as are the numbers 413. On our very first page, we're introduced to who could be considered the main character, Zeus Mal Poop Lord or John Egbert. Coincidentally, it's John's birthday today. He's been waiting for the beta of a game he's been really excited for to arrive, but it hasn't yet. We then see John go through a number of antics where he, quote, retrieves his arms from a chest and looking at a weirdly large amount of cakes in his room. It's when John opens the chest we're introduced to our first esoteric game abstraction that is part of John's reality, the capture log system. The capture log system is a manifestation of an inventory system. There are as many different ways to organize and store an inventory as there are people. Each inventory has a limited number of slots referred to as capture log cards. Rather than being called an inventory or a capture log deck or anything like that, the inventory is referred to as a Sylladex. The same way each system is different, there are different ways to retrieve the items in the inventory, referred to as a fetch modus. We'll leave the explanation of the system at that for now, but let's talk about John's inventory system. John's Sylladex functions like a stack, where where the last thing he put in is the first thing he can take out.
This seems like I'm providing you with unnecessary context, but this will come up again later. After a little bit more fussing around with his room, John reads a note on his drawer from his father. Happy birthday, son. I'm so proud of you. I won't quite go into character analysis here since I'm just trying to explain the narrative, but let's keep the fact that John's father makes physical reminders of how proud he is of his son in his mind, shall we? John also picks up a hammer and nails, which are important as the hammer will become his primary weapon. After more fussing around the room, John and Hussey sure did love wasting time here in the beginning. We're 22 pages in and finally hitting narrative. We're made aware of the beta we mentioned earlier, as well as its name, Spurb. I think it's important to have things make more sense now rather than later, so I'm going to explain what Spurb is and how it works. Spurb is, in its simplest form, the reproductive system of the universe. When a universe believes that it has reached the end of its life cycle, it releases Spurb in some form to the inhabitants and allows its citizens to attempt to create a new universe. When it releases Spurb, the universe always releases it as a video game in two parts, a client copy and a server copy. The minimum amount of people needed to run Spurb is 2, with each one acting as a server for the other. I won't explain too much more about the process, but let's just say that creating a universe is not easy, and it's something you'd want to have more than just one other person with you for. Now let's get back to the narrative where John introduces us to the first of his friends, Turntech Godhead. Is that a weird name? Yeah, it's because the more common means of communication is an application named PesterChump. The narrative doesn't tell us who this Godhead is, but I'll save you the suspense. This is the insufferable prick, Dave Strider. They have a brief conversation where Dave asks about John's birthday presents, the beta, the movie Little Monsters, and how John should go check the mail. John is about to go check when his dad comes home and beats him to the mail. After telling Dave his dad beat him to the mail, Dave tells us about yet another friend of theirs, tentacle therapist, Flighty Broad, Rose Lawn. After yet more shitting around, John makes a clever disguise and heads downstairs. We learn that he believes his arch nemesis is Betty Crocker. Yes, that's important, shut up. His dad has a fascination with harlequins, and his grandmother's urn sits above his fireplace. And his dad just left him another gift with another note on it. Champ, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. I believe in you. Inside is a life-size plush of a harlequin. John then goes into his father's study, finds a new capsule card to expand his Sylladex, and is frustrated when it just goes into his inventory rather than expanding it. This is where I want to explain something that I think is rather unique about Homestuck, both as a narrative as well as the game, the way it presents itself. Each character, and I mean every character, has a musical motif. For John, it's a piano. This will stay relevant no matter what. And when these characters are in scenes with other characters, their motifs will also be added to the music. This particularly applies to fight scenes, where two characters are performing a combo attack, their motifs will play together and harmonize. To my knowledge, the only other medium that does this is musicals, where music is quite literally part of the narrative. After more bullshit, John leaves the house and sees his dad has left some of the mail in the car. But seeing as he doesn't have the keys, he has to go talk to his dad anyway. We're introduced to Strife when John and his dad interact. See, Strife is just Homestuck's way of explaining combat. Like I said, we're skipping character analysis. Regardless, John gets a cake to the face, but he does get the mail along with his dad's PDA. Here, we're introduced to the last of John's first group of friends. Their community calls them the Beta Kids, mainly due to the fact that they're playing the beta version of Spurb, so we will too. The last member of the Beta Kids is Garden Gnostic, Farmstick, but last, Jade Harley. She wishes John a happy birthday before heading off. John and Dave talk, where Dave tells him to open up the big red package John just got in the mail. This is where I'll explain why I've been using specific colors where I can, except for the red axis. Each character has a very specific color they're associated with. John is blue, Dave is red, Rose is lavender, and Jade is green. These all correspond to their eye colors as well. John then installs the beta, finds a new fetch modus. This one works like a queue, where the last thing he put in is the last thing he'll be able to access. While the beta is installing, he finally opens the package from Dave. On Dave's 13th birthday, John got him a pair of sunglasses worn by Ben Stiller in a movie. As thanks, Dave got John the rabbit from Con Air, one of John's favorite movies. While John is absolutely geeked at the new piece of movie memorabilia, Rose has been trying to get a hold of him. When they start talking, they finally start playing the game. Rose acts as his server player, which allows her to manipulate his environment, such as moving furniture and building new additions onto the house and deploying machines. I'm going to explain as much as I can, so those of you that want to write your own fan sessions one day can, with as much information as possible. The first machine we're introduced to is the totem lathe. We'll get to the others here in a sec, but first, Rose asks John where his server copy of the game is. He says he doesn't have it, but his dad does, in the car that just left a little while ago. As punishment, not really, John goes to stand in the corner while Rose works. The second machine is the crux extruder, and the final machine is the alchemitor. Rose correctly deduces that these items are used in a crafting system, one similar to alchemy utilizing punched cards. John then proceeds to run around and investigate the number of weird machines that Rose dropped around and has a brief conversation with Jade where he tells her gift is in his dad's car. She says she doesn't know what Spurb is when he brings it up, but before he can explain or press her on it, Jade hears an explosion outside her house and goes to investigate. With Rose's help, John opens the crux extruder, releasing something called a kernel sprite, and displaying a countdown timer. For how long? 4 minutes and 13 seconds. Starting right now. John turns the wheel of the crux extruder and extrudes a log of crystal referred to as cruxite. Rose provides John with a pre-punched card from the game, then they get to work. While John works, Rose explains that the kernel sprite needs to be prototyped. The kernel sprite serves as some sort of guide for the game of Spurb. In order to meet one of the conditions for what would be considered a successful session, every player must prototype their sprite once before entering. The sprite can take a maximum of 2 prototypings, and we learn that sprites are drawn to the imminently or already deceased, giving players an opportunity to communicate with those that they've lost or will lose. I'm going to do the thing I did earlier and explain something the comic explains later now. Essentially, there are 3 common types of sessions: a successful session, a void session, and a null session. And each session seemingly exists on a timer. If you do not finish the game in time and you and your fellow players are wiped from existence. A successful session requires a space player and a time player at minimum. Additionally, each player must prototype their kernel sprite before entering the next stage of events. Prototyping after entering is fine, but prototyping before entering is required. A void session is seemingly the same as a successful session, however, they have a much shorter time limit, hours rather than days or weeks. And if they do not succeed, game over. A null session is apparently the most common type of session, and therefore the most inherently sad. As people playing had no way of knowing any of this information leading into the game, they never prototyped their sprites, and the game could never reach its fully playable state. Therefore, the kids are just trapped there, never able to finish playing the game. Anyway, back to the story. Using a pre-punch card Rose deploys, John begins trying to use it on various machines. While testing it on the altimeter, he uses his telescope and sees a meteor is heading imminently for his location. Rose posits that if the meteor problem were a game construct, we should try to solve it on the game's terms. After hearing/reading some god-awful raps from Dave, John uses the pre-punch card and a rod of Cruxite on the totem lathe. This creates a totem. When John tries to share the news with Rose, he gets the news that Tentacle Therapist is no longer connected, with 2 minutes left on John's timer. Anyway, let's see what Rose is up to, huh? Homestuck has a lot of cliffhangers. Get over it before it gets over you. We find out Rose's power went out. We also find out Rose's musical motif is the violin, due to her playing a brief refrain. She looks out the windows and sees a storm, only getting stronger outside her house, and sees a few meteors streak by as well. Rose uses a tree style of fetch modus, and each order of the card is determined by the first letter, and the only cards that are accessible are the ones that serve as the leaves of the tree. Hers try to specify are knitting needles. Rose sneaks through her house and hurries to an observatory attached and tries to connect to the internet. From the observatory, she connects to an unsecured network being broadcasted from the laboratory at the top of the hill. She reconnects with John with 41 seconds to spare. From there, we watch from her point of view as John places the carved totem on the altimeter and it summons a tree, providing John with an apple. This is John's entrance artifact, and by biting into it, he is able to enter the game and escape the meteor. And with that, that is the end of Homestuck Act 1.